Hi, Nick and Annie. I don't know if you guys can hear us yet.
Hi.
Okay, let's turn this up. Great. All right, I think it's a small crew tonight, even on the Zoom. There's a lot of people who had conflicts that are gonna catch the recording, but thanks for tuning in and coming out tonight. I'm really excited to be able to start doing some things in person. Even if not everybody can come, hopefully others can join us at some point, but it's been a long time. So, just a note about our scenery tonight. First, I guess, Annie, can you hear me and Nick?
Yes.
You guys can hear okay? Great.
Yeah.
If at any point you can't hear somebody, just holler. And I'm trying out a new little setup here. I think it's working. So just let us know if you have trouble hearing anything. Okay. But yeah, so a note about our scenery. Where we are tonight is the meadow. This is one of Grow Ohio Valley's urban farms. We have 4-ish farm sites, and this one is located on Vineyard Hill in East Wheeling. We do mostly high tunnel production here, but we're situated in our yurt, which is used mostly for educational programs. We have groups of kids that come here for various programming, and this is our first like real class that's actually been held in the yurt. So thank you Dave, for the inaugural yurt class. Hopefully we'll get to see you around the farm a little bit. It is raining. I was planning to walk around. Maybe we can brave the rain. Maybe it'll stop. We'll get started in here, and yeah.
I didn't bring the biggest umbrella.
All right. We'll see. It's going to be way more interesting if we get outside into the garden for a little bit, but we'll start in here and see if it lets up. So I think everybody knows me and Phoebe by this point. Phoebe's here as well. Hi, Phoebe. And we have Pam and Sarah here too. But we also today are joined by Tapa, who works for Grow Ohio Valley on our rural farm. Tapa, do you want to tell the people a little bit about what you do at Grow Ohio Valley?
No. What I do out there is I co-manage 25 acres of organic production along with Matt Pounds. And we have a pretty steady crew of generally 4 AmeriCorps volunteers.
Make it higher.
They go from 9 o'clock until 4 o'clock each day. They're a fantastic crew. And then there are other opportunities to share resources with the urban farm team as well, and the educational team as well. So periodically, one day or sometimes 2 days a week, AmeriCorps volunteers from those 2 teams, the urban farm team and the education team, also. And just to give you a sense of what we're growing, we have a crop plan that encompasses 14 types of vegetables on large scale: carrots, beets, chard, lettuce, watermelon, winter squash, on and on, goes on and on. And cabbage and kale and all that stuff. And our crop plan was built around, designed around what actually happened last year. What was grown, what was bought that we couldn't grow, and how to change that paradigm around, we want to grow everything that we distribute. So that was thanks to the expertise of Sarah Streck, who kept really good records of everything. We made a crop plan that is built around those factors and then how to expand that. And then in addition to the those vegetables I mentioned, we're also growing rye, perennial rye, buckwheat, and oats right now, and also sunflowers. And anyway, there's a lot more I could tell you, but I don't want to go on and on with details. So anyway, thank you for joining the meeting.
Yeah. If you want to talk to Papa, call him. Not during the day. He's farming. Cool. Yeah. So Tapa, you farmed for a really long time. So Tapa has like a lot of knowledge about all of these things. Not to gas him up too much, but I'm hoping we can supplement all of each other's knowledge today on some of these topics. And I guess let me point this toward the little agenda here. So this is what I'm hoping to cover today. This is like, honestly, each of these topics could really have their own whole hour, but we're going to cover some basics and just give some tips for success for the period that occurs between when you plant your seeds and when you eat your food, which is most of the growing season. It's not just as simple as sticking it in the ground and expecting it to grow. So we'll spend a little bit of time. I think I'm feeling pretty good about going outside and doing a little walk, if you guys don't mind getting a tiny bit damp.
I wore my sprawl. I was ready for mud.
You're ready for mud.
Garden club.
All right. I don't think it'll be too muddy, but it might just be a little bit damp. So we'll take a little walk around the garden and look at a few of these things. Then we'll come back and talk about something that is coming up in the near future, which is our harvest logs. I touched on this a little bit toward the beginning of our time together. Maybe one of our first classes I mentioned harvest logs, but one of the components of the Grow Appalachia program, people who give us our money, is that they really appreciate all the participants tracking their harvest. So we'll go over that in a little bit more detail. Then we'll have a little Q&A if anybody has specific questions about anything we talk about or anything that's happening in your garden. And then we'll hand you your tools and you're free to go. Does that sound good?
Yeah, great. You are
I'm Pam.
Pam.
Yeah.
Sure.
And do not let me forget your guys' fertilizer is in the back of my car.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think the thing to do would be to go outside. You guys down for that? Let's do it. All right, you guys are coming on the road. Ready?
I'm leaving my paper stuff here.
Yeah, leave the paper stuff. That's all good.
I'm a note taker.
Is your phone in a case? Do you need?
I'll let you know. Yeah,
I have my also.
it might be fine.
My daughter-in-law's going to stick me, so I'm taking her notes. She has a class.
Here for you all on the old internet. This is the yurt, set up to be, it's a little messy, honestly, but it's set up to be an educational space for a lot of the kids that we work with. This is our green shed carpet. We just got this. It matches the couch. All right. Let's go. We'll go out this way toward the garden. Well, not. Can I put you on camera? Yeah. Hey everybody, this is Danny. He's the director of Grow Appalachia Valley. Danny, this is everybody who's tuning into Grow Appalachia webinar tonight.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, like live right now?
You're live to 2 other people.
Wow. So I'm making this meeting because I thought
Hi, Danny.
Give us a chance to talk to
I'm
you.
gonna edit it.
Oh,
This is
yeah.
gonna be unedited.
Yeah, this is gonna be right on the internet. Do you want to say something? You don't have to say
What would you
anything.
like me to talk
You can tell them how happy you are for them to be here.
about? I'm here to build a railing staircase.
Oh, nice. Cool. We're just gonna walk around. Hopefully we won't be in your way too much. We're actually gonna head to the garden.
Here, I want Sen on
You
me
can
when
see
I get home,
Maggie.
so my dog says, who were you playing with? today?"
All right. All right. Sorry for that distraction. On we go. On we go.
In other words, a rainy event gives you so many acre feet of water,
Okay.
inch acre feet. They have some way to calculate it. But if you water too much, then you have another problem, which is that you leach out everything and it percolates below the root zone. Again, it depends on the type of soil. If you have sandy soil, I farmed in Mississippi for years,
Oh my.
and that was a huge problem. It's overwatering, or you get thunderstorms off the Gulf Coast, and they just all the hard work you did to amend the soil and make it nice and nutrient rich is gone. Just like the porosity of the soil just takes it away. So that's possible here too. Although these are kind of clay soils, it's unlike, you know.
Yeah. Well, great.
Where?
You want to move on?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's move to this bed over here, because next I want to talk about weeds. Tapa, you got some thoughts about weeds? So weed control is obviously an issue in any garden. If you're creating like the perfect environment for a plant to live, all of the plants are going to want to live there, not just the ones that you want to eat. So weeds will pop up, and there are different ways of dealing with them. I can if you want to talk about that, you can go for it, or I can let Phoebe demonstrate this hoe. So yeah, one of the tools that you're gonna get in your toolkit when you come to pick it up, those of you who aren't here tonight, is this stirrup hoe, and I'm gonna let Phoebe talk about it for you.
So, of all like the hoes I've used in the few years I've been farming, I really like the stirrup hoe. It also has, I think it's called, this one was called like an action hoe, but it has like a very, like it looks like a cowboy stirrup right there. And what it's gonna do is basically, when you pull it back on the like soil there, it's gonna loosen up the roots for the weeds. So you see how it's just pulling back, and then you can get like a really like good pattern going there, like just going back and forth. But yeah, it very much pulls up the roots, which with weeding, yes,
For 2 weeks, and my garden is.
yeah, stirrup hoes are awesome. And when it comes to weeding, if you don't get the roots, yeah, they just come back. And they will have more buddies with them, because you've chopped the heads off, and they're like, okay, let's grow more. But yeah, so this is one of the tools that you'll be getting. They are great. I've weeded whole beds with these before. It makes it very like efficient. And I very much, these were the tools that we picked out because we've had good luck before.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts and feelings about the stirrup?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm gonna throw it right over the fence. No, I'm not
You don't have your cultivators.
Anyway, so you can see this, here's a weed, I think this is sedge. I fought with this in Mississippi for years. But anyway, you see how it grows. It sends a rhizome out like that, and then it comes up again. So stirrup posts are actually very good, but in kind of particular conditions, like if you've got like a rough surface, they're helpful. But they don't, what you want to be careful is when using a stirrup pole is not to cut it off like that, because there it is, ready to come back again. So you've got to, loosen and then do some handwork of actually knocking the soil off. Otherwise, it's what I call cosmetic weeding. It looks like you
Yeah.
weeded it, and you're like, wow, I weeded it. But 5 days later, it's all
You're gonna
coming
have to
back
do it again, yeah.
So you've actually got to take the time, and which in certain conditions, they're good. It's a good, really good tool.
This kind of soil looks like it would be better than my more clay.
You know, this has a
But-
layer
Well,
of compost on
Stirrup
it, too.
poles also, I mean, what Phoebe was showing was obviously there's weeds here, right? And as the saying goes in the organic world, if you can see them, it's too late. Because
Oh.
the scale on which you're trying to deal with, this good sized garden here, what to speak of what I'm dealing with acres. So stirrup poles are good not only for what she just did, if you use the tool right, but they're also good for preemptively weeding, which means you
Even
just,
before you see
yeah,
them
before you
coming
even
up.
see them, when the soil conditions are just right and it's starting to crust over just a little bit, you just run it through like this. Then you don't have to think about weeds again for 10 days. And if you don't do that and you can see the weeds starting to come and you've got a lot of area you're working with, they're going to win. So this is 3 or 4 people with one of these in a garden area, you can really preventively weed it so that you're not fighting with it later on when they get up to much more adult size.
Yeah, prevention is huge. Anything more on weed control you got, Tapa?
Yeah, the other thing is these are, it's an extension of your arms, right? But I have a technique of weeding. I really get to know the soil structure, the weeds that are growing there, and what the plant's like. I call it rowing. Okay. This you're standing up, but generally people are doing this all the time, up and down, up and down. You do that enough and you get really worn out, lifting your whole torso. So what I do is I sit, usually have a cushion. I sit like almost like in a yoga position, like this. And then I've got my arm span reach to deal with all this. And I can just really feel the structure of the soil and get right down there and get everything without bending over. And then when I'm done with that area, you don't have to throw these away. It's not like you have to throw them over the fence. You can actually pile them as long as the dirt is off the root and use them for mulch later on. It's organic matter. Just don't let them get started again. Let the sun make sure that the root system is exhausted and has given up the ghost. Then there's fertilizer right there. Hey, rowing means instead of getting back up again, you just go like this. Now I'm in a whole new area. I got my whole wingspan again to deal with
Saves
this.
your back.
Yeah, it saves your back. Because I've seen, in working with young people, AmeriCorps volunteers, that you ask them to weed something, but if you don't show them some kind of, it's called ergonomic, that term? Anyway,
Yeah, I
a
think you're right.
more bodily friendly way to do it. It's not so stressful.
Probably
Here's what they do. They kind of support themselves with one arm. They're bending here. Their knees are bent, and they don't last very long, and they get an attitude about it quick. Whereas if you actually think of it as I'm learning about these plants and I'm learning about the structure of these plants. If I have things that are even more deeply rooted, we don't have a trowel, do we?
I can go get
Anyway,
one.
I even loosen with a trowel like this. And see here, you got a corn plant with this crabgrass going right next to it. So you're not going to get that with a scuffle hoe or a stirrup hoe. If you try, you stand the danger of hitting your plant. So anyway, I'm a big advocate of getting close to the ground. And then while you're there, you can do some yoga, asanas
Stretch it out.
like that.
Yeah.
That way it keeps you really, you're like this. That's a really good way to be. Then you roll backwards. Usually I have a cushion too, so I'm not getting completely dirty.
We
You can tell by my pants, I haven't been used to cushions.
we haven't fully launched it yet, but we're piloting a concept called farm gym. Get in shape on the farm.
Yeah.
That's kind of a joke, but
I've called it
Cool.
garden fit in the past.
there you go. Garden fit farm gym. Awesome. You mentioned mulch there for a second. Do you want to move on and talk a little bit about mulching? We can look at some of these examples here.
Okay.
We could pick one that I think is the best and one that I think is not the best. And you can tell me what you think too. So this is mulched. They waited until the plants had already come up to apply mulch, which is essentially just a covering of something, some material that you apply to the over top of the soil. And it has a lot of different benefits. There's a lot of reasons why you would apply mulch to your garden, including, I mean, water conservation. It'll keep water from evaporating out of your soil. It can help with weed suppression if you do it correctly. Although if you don't do it correctly, you can end up with more weeds. And then it can also add fertility as it decomposes. So mulch is pretty awesome. Maybe Tapa has some more poetic thoughts about mulch that he can tell you.
Again, in this particular area here, if you could pan down to the hay and then over to the straw or to the wood chips. Yeah, you have two types of mulch here. One is these wood chips. And when you have wood chips, they take quite a while to break down. You know, they do the job, they actually keep the weeds out. But they generally create what you might call a fungal dominant soil type. In other words, the kind of things that grow are encouraged to grow with wood chips are like mushrooms, things like that, as compared to a bacterial dominant soil type. Herbaceous plants like spinach, lettuce, chard, all that stuff prefers bacterial type soils, which are generally built around more like this. This is, of course, carbon in this stage, but different than wood chips, which are more fungal. They encourage a fungal kind of soil type. This encourages more of a bacterial type of soil type.
Is that straw?
Yeah, this is straw means that whatever plant this was before, the head of it was cut off, probably harvested, and this is what's left. Whereas hay is just whatever you cut.
Out
And-
in the pasture.
Right.
When we do that.
Right. And
So
this-
so hay has the seed head on is the distinction.
So again, the point is if you're growing things that are herbaceous, you know, most of your succulent vegetables, you know, again, lettuce, spinach, that kind of stuff, they prefer a bacterial soil type. Doesn't mean you can't use wood chips, but it's not as beneficial. It takes a long time for them to break
Which
down.
is better for weed control.
They're both good.
They're both good.
They're both good, but I would be inclined more to use this for pathways, the wood chips for pathways. And then right around the plants, they like something more herbaceous, like they are. That's what seems to build around it.
What kind of straw do you need if you had to purchase it? Do you know that it's a good straw, that it didn't come from somewhere that has all kinds of not good things sprayed on it or ground up in the field and stuff like that? Is there
Yeah.
a way to know that?
Yeah, you have basically you have to find the source. Around a 800-pound round bale of what we call junk hay,
Okay,
mulch hay.
okay.
If you got to find the source, ideally, and you ask them, did you use 2,4-D?
Okay.
Did you use atrazine? Did you use in your fields to herbicide those fields so that they only get a monoculture of what they want to grow, by which they bale and turn into a round bale of hay. So if you're not careful, I've seen it happen where somebody gives you a round bale. Normally a round bale like that's worth about $35, and they give it to you because they don't need it anymore or whatever. And then you, with all good intention, you mulch with it, and you just corrupted your soil for about the
Yeah.
next 3 years.
Yeah,
I've seen it happen where nothing will grow. I mean, it'll grow, but it's all
I've read about that.
distorted and it's it's poison basically.
If there is
So you got to be careful. You
for
gotta be-
like for home gardeners that maybe wouldn't acquire a huge round bale of hay, do you have a recommendation of like an ideal mulch?
yeah, leaves.
Mhm.
If you,
Any type of tree.
yeah, pretty much. Not,
You
I
like
mean,
the
not pine,
oaks and
not
the things.
pines.
I have tons of oaks in there,
Right.
a little bit.
If you designate an area in your yard where you in the fall you gather the leaves and it's dry and you run over them with your lawnmower
Uh-huh.
like that, ship them up a little bit,
Mhm.
and just pile them, you'll get black soil like you find in a forest. That's why the forest is so
Yeah.
rich, right? It's just simple.
Thank
But the
you.
more you can break it up and oxidate it, so it does oxidate like that. If you can't do that because you don't have the equipment to do that, you can at least somehow corral it. I've used this old fencing or whatever,
Mhm.
some T-posts, metal T-posts. And even if you do absolutely nothing to it, but just throw it in a pile, take about 3 years in this climate. And it's beautiful soil in 3 years by
And
doing.
you can put it right on the ground, you can like put a tarp or something to contain it. Keep it from,
If you go online, go to YouTube and just go how to make compost out of leaf mold.
okay,
Leaf
And what-
mold, yeah.
Another way to do it, if you don't have a facility of, okay, I'm gonna blow my neighbors' minds by having a giant leaf pile right next to their kitchen window, if you live in a suburb somewhere. So what you can do is you can bag it. It's dry, you wet it a little bit, if you're bagging it dry, you poke holes in it like that, and that aeration will cause it to compost into black soil in time. Think about a year or so. That's another way. So just go YouTube.
Okay.
Where all good things come from. YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube is great. And then one last thing before we move on from mulch, I guess, is when would you advise applying mulch? Like at what point in the growing
Okay, that's a really good
process?
question because in the springtime, if you think I'm going to get a really early start, I'm going to plant things that like cold weather, like peas. They can take cold. Lettuce can take cold. Spinach can take cold. So you work up some ground, not wet. Don't work soil when it's wet because you ruin it. You basically, let's see if I can dig some up here. There's any. We have any soil.
No, it's all clay.
It's mostly mulch.
and
Anyway,
mulch.
if you pick up a handful of soil in the springtime, you're trying to get an early start on your garden, and you go like that, really crush it. If you can't break it with your thumb or drop it from shoulder level, if it breaks up, you should not be in there. Because what you're doing is pushing the lungs out of the soil, pushing the lungs out, making it an aerobic or anaerobic environment for the bacteria in there, the fungi, the algae that are in there, that are the real farmers. They're the ones that are actually doing the work. They're eating everything. They're dying, they're reproducing, eliminating. Their life cycle, which goes on, millions of times in an hour, is what the plant root hairs pick up on. Those minerals and those molecules, what the plant root hairs or cation exchange pick up on, and that's what feeds the plant. So if you're in there tromping around thinking, oh, I'm getting an early start on my garden, and you're crushing the soil so that it's compacted, it takes about 3 years for that to recover through the freeze and thaw cycle. Winter, summer, like that. You don't want to do that. Okay, so in the fall, what you do is you get your garden fluffed up. You get some manure on it or whatever fertilizer you can afford, compost, whatever, chicken manure, cow manure, whatever. You fluff it up, and then you throw some hay on top of that. So your garden is roughed up, it's fertilized. Now it's got a blanket on it for the winter, so that those microorganisms are happy that they've got some protection. However, in the springtime, you don't leave that mulch on. You pull it off, let it warm up. If you leave it on there, you delay your planting date. And you also encourage slugs and all kinds of other, living entities that want to live in there, eat your plants. So that's how I always did it. I just roughed it up. I manured it. And then in the springtime, and I mulched it. So turn the soil, fertilize it, mulch it. This is on a garden level, of course, not on a field level. Right. And then in the springtime, part that, get it out of there so that soil warms up nicely. Then later on, you can put it back on again.
Is fluffing with a shovel, or it can even be with a tiller? When you fluff the soil.
Better with a shovel, because a tiller homogenizes everything,
Mhm.
and it really disturbs the micro and macro entities there. They don't like it. It's like taking soil, putting it in a blender. And
I've read several things
not
about
happy.
that, the difference. I
They're
wondered
not-
your opinion.
right, they're not happy with that. I mean, sometimes you can't. You don't have a choice. You're in a
See,
big
a
hurry.
little hand tiller probably wouldn't be as the fluffing as bad as the roto tiller, would it?
Yeah, this is just as bad. It's
Is it
a
just as bad?
smaller.
I just meant because all I do is just wiggle it a little, you know what I
Okay.
mean?
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm not actually like
Yeah.
turning it over just a little.
Right. But I
Or
don't
tines.
have the tools with me, but I could show you tools that make the lifting of that soil really easy. And then you're aerating it too. You're getting air down there so that you're creating an environment by which the algae, the bacteria, and the fungi and other entities are very happy. Like in just a little bit of soil, just in that much soil, there are more types of the population of that is greater than all the people on Earth right there in good soil. And
That's
it's-
impressive.
Yeah, there's 8 billion people on Earth. So when you take chemical fertilizer for profit motive or what you think is convenience, and you put that on the soil to stimulate growth, you have basically committed bactericide. You basically killed them, it burns them. So now you've got nothing living in there. And the only thing the plant responds to is chemical fertilizer. And that's being done on a massive scale. All that corn you see growing in Iowa and Indiana, that's what they're doing. They're killing the soil, basically. In the Big Wheeling Agrarian Center, 25 acres, for 14 years it was corn, monocrop of corn to feed for feed cows, pigs, whatever, for slaughter. And we're just recovering from that now. It's going to take years. I mean, you couldn't find black soil like that, life dependent. You couldn't find an earthworm up there because he killed it. The farmer prior to us just poisoned the soil so bad. So it takes time to recover from it. To pay your debt back.
Yeah.
So now that we've got plants growing, I don't have any mulch now. At what stage or height of my plants should I
This time of year, as soon as possible.
as soon as possible?
Yeah, you want to conserve that moisture. Plus, those plants are breaking down, and they're breaking down, and or the mulch rather is breaking down, and it's creating food stuff for those plants. So, we're past frost and all that stuff. So don't be shy about it.
So that's what you want to do, is just wait to pass frost to cover your ground back up.
Well, that and
After it
also
warms
look
up.
at the rain patterns. If it's too wet, your soil's damp and cold, don't mulch it. But wait until it's more stable. Things are just
Yeah, but definitely at this height, this is a really appropriate time to have mulch. And you can even at this time of year, if you're getting plants in, you can work up your space and put the mulch over and then part it and plant into it. So yeah, at this point you want to get it on as soon as you can. All right. Any more on mulch? We can run up to the high tunnel
Yeah,
for a minute and take a look in there. Anything?
We got a quick interview with Danny.
Yeah, we can check in with Danny. He's digging us. All right.
Does it make a difference if the straw is like old has been sitting wet? Older kind, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be fresh and newer
No.
straw. It can be any
No, actually, the older is a little better.
is better.
Breaks down. Hey, you gotta keep in mind, depending on whether it's hay, you're also planting future weeds. Which this is what it is. Which kind of really-
Yeah. Hey, Danny, mind if we scoot by?
Get on by.
Great.
Can I say a few words?
Sure.
This is Danny Swan. He's a Lithuanian immigrant who's planting papaya trees. Kind of a weird shape pot. They don't have any growth on it whatsoever.
We can
but
take
his
this with
idea
a
is
grain
put
of
some
salt.
cow manure in it, and then
Everyone
that.
listening at home.
And I tried telling him it's not going to work, but he won't listen to me. So see, he's trying to walk his way away from this by speaking Lithuanian. But
This is Osage orange, which is in fact, unlike me, from Europe. And it's an invasive plant, but it's kind of magical because it's called Osage orange for this reason. The color, the inside. And it is even better than locust in terms of never decaying. I mean, eventually it'll decay. But so it's really valuable as a fence.
Danny's building a fence right now. Well, almost.
Technically a railing.
A railing.
So we have a big group of people coming, some of whom have mobility limitations on Saturday. And the compromise was we can use this staircase if we get a railing installed. So I sallied forth into the forest, retrieved a few Osage orange posts, and we used that bamboo.
that kind of initiative is my Grow Appalachia.
All right. Thanks, Danny. See you later. All right. So we're approaching our high tunnel greenhouses here, and we'll take you inside. These are where we grow a lot of our most money making crops. Yeah, let's go into the tomato tunnel.
Are they sold other places than down at the market?
Mostly it's a store, yeah, and then we have a CSA. You're good. A CSA, which is essentially a subscription. We'll get Maggie out of here. Sorry, Maggie's getting kicked out. Yeah, so we have a CSA, which is a subscription box for produce where we sell these, and a few other outlets. There's some restaurants buy them and stuff like that. But these tomatoes have been in here for a while, a lot earlier than you would put them in the ground outside, just because with the high tunnel, we're able to keep the temperature much warmer, and we actually grow greens in here all year round. So we can get the tomatoes a head start, and as a result, they're a lot bigger right now than ones that you might have planted outside. But I guess I wanted to show, this is an example of a plastic mulch. This is another way you can cover up your soil. Maybe not the most, oh no, it shut down. Not the most economical way to do it. Okay, we're back.
Uh,
Oh yeah, so I wanted to show the plastic mulch really quick and also the trellising. Just to note it, because I know we talked about trellising a little bit
I'm
to
so
save,
sorry, Pam. Oh, no, you're fine.
a little bit about trellising to save space, but it's also a lot of plants should be trellised and it can keep them a lot healthier. With these tomatoes, a lot of times you see those tomato cages that they sell at Lowe's, and usually those aren't quite enough to support a tomato. The trellising can give them a lot more support, and it's also really adaptable to the growth. So with these particular ones, we use these little clips clipped onto the tomato there, and you can get those. I don't know if you can get them at Lowe's, but you can get them on Amazon.
Yeah.
So you can undo them as the tomato grows and adjust it to a better height. So those are pretty nice, and they give the plant the support that they need rather than the rigid structure of a cage. And these tomatoes are what they call indeterminate varieties. So they will continue to vine up and up and up and keep producing fruit. Some tomatoes are determinate varieties, which means they won't keep growing as tall, and those might be more suitable for the cages. But definitely, if you have an indeterminate variety of tomato, you want to use a trellis. And there's other things you can trellis too. We do cucumbers in here like this. I think we may have talked about trellising your peas and beans because those are viney. You might not use a single string for that. You might use more of like a net system or a lot of different crisscrossing strings like we had in the garden for beans or peas. But for the tomatoes and cucumbers and stuff that vines up, you can use a system like this.
Yeah, these are easier to pick too, as compared to a cage.
Oh yeah, a lot
A
easier.
whole lot easier. What normally happens to these out in the open is they get attacked by either early blight or late blight. So there's a whole science to knowing how to prune them, how far up you should pick the leaves off, and how to prevent early blight or late blight before you even see it by using an organic compound called copper sulfate. So if you get on a regular spraying cycle with copper sulfate, that you'll have tomatoes for a lot longer.
And that blight, it comes from the soil, right? So like that enters the plant if the wrong part is in contact with the soil at the wrong time. And then the leaves, right?
It's also airborne as well.
No, it's also-
Sometimes a big company, a big nursery like Lowe's will buy plants from Georgia, and they've got the blight. And then people buy those tomato plants and they put them out in their yards, and the air picks up the spores from that, and all of West Virginia is suffering from tomato early blight because of it. It happened a few years ago. It came out of nowhere. But it was traced back to that.
And we don't have time to cover like all of the disease and pest control stuff tonight, but I have links to a couple of whole webinars that you guys can watch that are just related to disease and pest control. That can give some good ideas on that. Or maybe we can invite Tom to that and he can give us a whole course.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about in the tunnel?
No.
Let's,
Well, one thing to note is that while we're protected by this plastic, this is 6 mil greenhouse grade, slightly not tinted, but frosted plastic. You'll notice that on the doorways here, there's added insect protection, because what we learned the hard way was that if you don't do this meaning every effort to keep other insect species out of the greenhouse, you'll pay for it. Even though you're in what appears to be a pretty protected zone, you gotta, this is really recommended. It's on the sides, it's here, it's in the windows. So the kind of bugs that cause those problems, that carry bacteria and they bite things, and their saliva contains funguses and all kinds of things, are minimized by this.
Because you have to have air.
Yeah, definitely have to have airflow.
Cool. All right. Did somebody, did one of you guys get made the host of this meeting?
I
Before-
saw that Nick got made the host.
Nick, you're the host. Hey, Nick. Are you there?
He's muted.
I've been muted.
There you are. Hey, Nick. Oh, good. I just wanted to see
I think- I don't know.
if we were still recording, and it looks like we are.
I
That's
think
great.
it's garlic.
Okay, great. Well, we can walk back through the tunnel, back down to the yurt and finish up.
Okay,
We're in the home stretch here.
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna meet you there, but I'm gonna, yeah. I'm sorry.
We'll be right.
Yeah. I get a whole aerial view of all the tomatoes that are currently in this greenhouse.
Yeah, they really packed it full.
Yeah,
Heat tucked in there.
yeah, you can see those kind of through.
All that, right?
Yeah, we actually, for one of our other education programs that we do, we work with a after-school center who planted a lot of these tomatoes during one of their 2-hour sessions with us. These 3 rows in particular. Yeah.
There's a little bit. Right now.
60.
Yeah, very. This is not have any
Now,
fruit
what
yet.
variety is it? Are they all the same variety or
They're
they're
all
not?
There's some
different.
fruit
Probably
starting on that one, but you
varieties.
can see the greens that are scattered about with the tomatoes.
And pollinating.
In here, actually released ladybugs. They're-
And ladybugs help with the.
They help with the
aphid stuff.
aphids too, yeah. which Clearly. There's a lot there, but that's really hard to avoid. The main strategy to counteract the aphids that we're using is just to make sure. They might apply an insecticide a little bit later in the season. And again, we'll talk about that. And if you guys end up having issues with insects, then we will have some insecticides available for you. But I'll send information out about that pretty soon. It's a thing. It happens to us too.
Yeah.
Bugs love you.
My cousin said he found last year reached this great diatomaceous earth.
Yeah.
inside it, and that was
It's gonna go
very-
up and around like the other way. Yeah. No, you're fine.
Yeah, I haven't
It
really
messes me up a lot.
used that on the leaves.
Does that go on the soil?
Yeah, so it's put on the soil. I mean,
I apologize to those with motion sickness. We're making our way back down to the yurt.
some specific insecticides that can kill aphids.
Hannah, do you know how thick a string that they're using up there? Nick just asked how heavy it has to be to support.
Man, I don't know exactly. That is a pretty standard gardening twine. So you could probably go to Lowe's or a garden supply store and find that. It's just like a clear
Yes.
or you could use like a hemp twine as well. It will, you do want it to be able to hold quite a bit of weight because once the tomatoes come on, it's going to be pretty heavy. So I wouldn't use this is way too thin. You would use probably a multiply if you're going to use a cotton string, a multiply cotton string. But those are plastic and that helps. They won't degrade over the season. Is unfortunately plastic, which we don't like to use a lot of. We can avoid it, but it does stay pretty well. Okay, the thing I wanted to show you out here. Well, man.
Yeah, the macrame.
Like macrame twine, yeah, that would work. Okay, so the next thing, really the last thing, I need to take it.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you guys about. You really can hear us. I feel like it's not showing up on here. The last thing I wanted to show you and talk about is our harvest situation. And some of you are getting to a point where we are starting to get some harvest. Pam, I'm hearing you're getting really close. And for those of you that aren't yet, I'm sure it's going to be coming up pretty soon before you know it. And Grow Appalachia really wants us to be able to track that harvest. So we handed out some harvest logs to you guys in your binders. And when we go inside here in a second, we can look at those in a little bit greater detail. But before we do that, I just wanted to show you a little technique for measuring that is really easy, really quick, and everybody should be able to do it because there's one of these buckets available for everyone. So the sheet, I believe, asks for the measurement in either pounds or pecks. And peck may not be a measurement that everybody is familiar with, but it is a quantity that's really commonly used to measure vegetables. And it is equal to about 2 gallons. So really an easy way to convert pecks is to convert it to gallons. There's 2. And if you don't have a container that is the size of a peck, which most of us don't, I know I don't have one handy, you can make one for yourself or at least mark one out using a 5-gallon bucket. So everybody, if you come and pick up your tools, we'll be able to pick up one of these 5-gallon buckets. And a really easy way to mark it out to be able to measure pecks is to mark off a line where it fills up to 2 gallons. So what I did here was I happen to have a 2-gallon watering can. So I put 2 gallons of pond water. Sorry, this is really gross looking. 2 gallons of pond water in here. Yeah, like algae. And then I let it settle. You can kind of see it lapping up and down. And so then when it settles, I took a string and wrapped it around there wherever the water line was. And then I took a little Sharpie and made a line where the string was. So then I know if I fill that up to that line with whatever vegetable I'm harvesting, I know I'll have a whole peck of that vegetable. And really conveniently on your bucket, it lines up perfectly with the bottom where the Tractor Supply logo is. Thank you, Tractor Supply Company, for that. Yeah, so that's 1 peck. You can mark it out so you have multiple marked, and if you're really harvesting a lot of something, then you can fill it up to the second line. But that's just, it's like an easy way to do it. You can use it as a collection tool, just throw them in there. You don't have to mess with the scale or anything. And then you can put that note right on your harvest log. So that's what I recommend to keep track of that really easily. And obviously, gallon containers are pretty readily available. So there's that. Let's go inside. It's pretty wet out here. There is a little loft over there. All right. Yeah, so for those of you that aren't here in person, about picking up your bucket. Oh, yeah. Nick, how about I'll connect up with you after this. Pam is gonna head up your way. She's a lot closer, so she can drop your stuff off at the FRN, and we can coordinate pick up for you. You guys are probably the farthest up, so everyone else should be within pretty easy access of our of the greenhouse. So after this, I'll coordinate with you guys on picking up your materials. If you have a preferred time, you can go ahead and let me know. That might be the time you want to pick up, or around pretty much all the time to get whatever you need. All right, so earlier I referenced the harvest log, and I really can pass them out to everybody who's here in person. What dog here? And out. Just get them. Plug Family Roots Farm in Wellsburg. Through these strawberries, they're really delicious. Yeah. Okay. So already have these. They should be in your binder. I gave everyone. I think I gave you 8 or 10. So there's a lot. If for some reason you run out, let me know. I will make sure to get you some more. Or the other option is you can use the digital copy that can be found in the digital version of your binder. I sent everyone a link to that toward the beginning of the season, but I can send it again. That. So if you're more paper oriented, feel free to keep track of this by hand on the paper. But if it's easier for you to just make a note of it when you're in the field and then input it to a digital doc, that's also totally fine. You can make a copy of that doc that's in your digital binder folder and input your numbers right into that that way. And this is arranged, I think we have 1 sheet per log. So just through it in detail. It's pretty self-explanatory, but just for the sake of being on the same page, we'll just go over it. So you've got the month here. Obviously, you want to just list what month it is. And then in this column, we've got all of the crops. There are a lot of crops here, and honestly, we give out all of these seeds, but they just listed a lot of extra in case anybody did some extra stuff. So just make notes about the crops that you are growing. And if there's something that you're growing that is not on here, you can feel free to just add it in, add another little column, and just add the name of whatever that thing is that's on here that you're growing. Oh yeah, okay. I think what I did, I took the. Okay, let's look at the one inside Pam's binder. I did take the crop off of the one in your binder. So you'll write the name of. Yeah, that's great. You can look at Pam's in as an example. You're gonna want to write the name of the crop in that column, and then it's exactly the same. So you'll just do the date that you harvested it, the quantity. She's been using pounds, but feel free to use that system. And when you text, you don't have to be too precise about it. I would say try to get it as close as you can to like a quarter. You don't have to get more specific than that.
Can I ask a question about the crop name?
Yes.
Does it have to be each specific one, or can it be like tomatoes?
It
Or
can
does
just
it need, go ahead.
you just specify by variety.
Say that again.
I said you can just say tomatoes. You don't need to specify by variety. If you have two different kinds of tomatoes, you can throw them in the same bucket and call it whatever.
Okay.
Tomatoes. Question. Nick is asking, how do you do lettuce? The lettuce would be just also throw it in the bucket. You can measure that in. Oh, am I? Sorry, was I just? I'll say it again really quick. If you're doing head lettuce, you can harvest and make a note of how many heads. So if you harvested 2 heads, write 2 heads and make sure you note the use there. If you're not using text, make sure you actually write heads. But if you're harvesting like a salad mix that's just loose leaves, then you would measure it in your peck bucket and the number of pecks. The of peck in this case. And so it has looks like 4 columns. Did I put 4 on the ones in your binder? Did I put 5? 4 on the ones in your binder as well. So for each be able to record 4 different harvests. So quantity, that's 1 harvest. The quantity again, that's another harvest, and 2 more times before you need to go to another sheet. If this gets to be too much or too confusing, just make some notes, and I would appreciate if you can just do your best to get me whatever notes you have so I can that information. And you can share it if you want with everybody else. If you haven't yet joined our Facebook group, if you're on Facebook, I think most of you might be in there already, actually. But you can share your harvest numbers in the Facebook group and maybe get other people excited to post their harvest too. Yes, ma'am.
What we put on this, can this come from here for us to grow?
Yeah, like some seed that you got by yourself?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Or other things that were there, like my rhubarb and the things like the asparagus that were already in my yard.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was I can be an I've avoided it for long. Yeah, so if there is something that you went ahead and bought on your own, I know several of you did that. You can put that on there as well. If it came from your garden that you're doing this year, you can go ahead and put it on the sheet. We love snow. Grow Appalachia would love snow. Yeah, any other questions about the harvest log in particular? They're due at the end of the month, at the end of every month here on out, and I'll put that in an email. But at the end, if you, I think the easiest thing to do, we'll have a few times where we see each other, but if you either email it to me if you're doing it digitally, or you can take a picture and text it to me. That's also totally fine.
I learned how.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Smartphones are great.
Thank my granddaughter.
Yeah. So yeah, taking a picture and texting it is totally fine as long as I can see all the information.
Let me just show you, because I think it's not acceptable from what you're saying. When I had my asparagus, once it comes, I get a lot. And instead of doing each individual one, because it's like every day,
Oh, yeah.
I was gathering them into one. You don't.
Oh,
count that
that's
that way.
okay. As long as it's all there.
As long as it's consistently the same way,
Yeah. And
Okay.
or as long as
you can read.
as long as I can see what you need.
All right.
And if I have questions, I'll ask you. I know I get a little
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for doing this. This is really
Super cool.
yes. Yeah.
Very nice stuff.
Cool. Any other questions about that in particular? And if not, we can, we have a couple minutes left. We can go into general Q&A. If anybody has any questions about things we went over today, or if you're having a particularly tricky problem with your garden, you can watch the chat, or I could watch the chat on here, or you can unmute and ask a question. So we'll spend the next 5 to 10 minutes doing. If anybody
Would like to talk. You had talked about the blight of the tomatoes. What was the beginning of the helpful spray? Sulfate. Do you mix? Is that something
Yeah,
in
you
a sprayer?
mix it, comes the liquid.
Are you spraying it on the soil or the plant?
Plants and stuff. Ideally, you do it preventatively. Start regular application every 10 days. That really, that's never, yeah. Help to prevent it.
And you said some pruning to keep it off the ground, right?
Yeah, I personally, I take everything off the ground for about a foot.
Mhm.
Maybe I put off for a foot. Water splatters. And that light moving soil splatters up on underside. It's just like fire. Every few days, it's gone. It's gone. That's fine. You guys made it.
Written that they,
Organic.
my tomatoes are probably at the point where I can cut from the bottom. Similar.
So copper sulfite for the tomato blight.
Right now.
Yeah.
As a liquid or something. Brand. The application, how to apply it. Teaspoon. Yeah. That's it. And it's organic.
I have a question, and this is probably because of my grandmother and her brother who liked to use Epsom salt dissolved in water and sprayed once she started getting blossoms. And they're long gone, but that's what they always did. And I found their note, handwritten note about doing
Oh,
that to prevent root. Is that something that is, because that's what they did? is that actually something that's
I think that's the potassium process. But then if it's
magnesium? I think it's
magnesium.
magnesium.
it's a booster.
Now, are those things, it doesn't say when to apply them. Is that like before the tomatoes are forming or after they're forming later on? Does it, it doesn't?
Yeah, I'm
make-
not
Okay.
I'm sure. Yeah, the other thing great is if your soil is deficient in calcium, calcium is a building block for cell walls.
Mhm.
What happens is that if the soil doesn't have enough calcium, but they rot. We have tomato and rot.
Mhm.
That's because it can't make sufficient tomatoes to grow to its full normal size.
That's what compliment me is in a tomato that looks like that. It's just got like black on it. I think it's like a disease attacking it. Really, helps.
Well, the other thing with tomatoes, if it's drought, and you put water, the same thing happens. So the tomatoes will rot as they're not getting sufficient transfer of nutrients, allow more new cells to make the full tomato. So yet, the tomatoes be very consistent. Tomatoes are.
I do. How can I make that happen?
Any other questions from any of you guys on the Zoom?
We have a question if we may. We got some lettuce growth out there in the garden bed, and it's we got them in a couple different beds. Actually, I can just show you. Some of the lettuce is doing really good and getting kind of tall, and we didn't know whether to like thin it out or just kind of let it grow a little bit longer. This looks this is getting taller than the stuff we have in this bed, and we didn't know maybe if we're like robbing these smaller beds of maybe nutrients and maybe should kind of thin them out. Did you have any advice on that?
I didn't see that.
Oh,
Yeah, at that point. I didn't catch the last bed.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the whole question, but I think it's relevant to thinning out lettuce. Is that what you were asking?
yes, yes, yes.
Yep.
So it depends on the variety of lettuce. If it's a what they call cut and come lettuce, you cut it and not really necessary. And I say that because I've grown like whole quarter acres of lettuce for market. On the other hand, it's a variety that likes to form kind of a loose leaf head. Your market, or you just prefer that kind of lettuce for your own consumption, then yeah. And lettuce generally is so hardy that you can even carefully replant it without having to grow again from seed.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess depending on that variety, if it's the cut and come again, I think if it's the one that we handed out, we had the salad bowl was a cut and come again.
Usually do three.
Yeah, I think one of them is the mixture of lettuce that we got in the seeds, and you can kind of tell because it's growing like different leaves up through it. And then I think the other one was just more of a leafy lettuce, maybe the black seeded Simpson, I believe, kind of just more of a leafier style lettuce. And we actually have one of those taken off that was in the bed last year, and it's really growing. And and it's taken up a lot of space. So we kind of thought maybe we needed to spread that variety out a little bit. And
Yeah, if it's getting to be really big, cut it, harvest it.
okay.
Yeah, you don't have to cut the whole thing, but if it's, those outer leaves that are starting to get big, I would imagine you can harvest those and just make sure you don't cut it all the way down at the center so that the inner leaves keep growing. But you can harvest those outer leaves and eat it if it's the cut and come variety.
If it's the cut and come variety and you harvest it too low, you'll kill it.
Okay.
2 inches.
Yeah.
Is it better to cut or rip?
Is it better cut or rip?
We've heard two different things.
Yeah, serrated knife. Yeah, serrated knife is good. It's a little more control than ripping, I would say.
And I guess my next question is, I know in like the earlier meetings or in the binders, it said to sign up for a week of blogging. Do you still need people to do that, or you got the blog covered?
If you want to sign up for a blog, we would love that.
We'll sign up for a blog.
Cool. I'll reach out to you guys.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take a picture of your salad.
We will.
Cool. All right. Let's see. I've got it to be 8 o'clock now, and that is what we told you would be our end time. So if anybody needs to go now, you are free. The next things that are going to happen will be here. I'll let you look at me. The next things that are going to happen will be, let's see, it's June 10th right now. There will be a harvest log due at the end of June. So make sure you're recording your harvest as you get them this month. Some of you are really coming up on that. If you haven't picked up your tools yet, some of you have, but if you haven't and you're not here tonight, send me an email and suggest a time during the week. Really, we are very flexible and we can make just about any time work to meet you at the same location that we've been meeting for all of our pickups at the greenhouse in East Wheeling, to get you your toolkit. And maybe we can just show off a toolkit really quick for those people who aren't here. We have 4 items in there, and so we've got that stirrup hoe that we showed you guys earlier in the garden for you, that you can use preemptively and on your tiny weeds. We've got a trowel. It's a pretty sturdy one, got a serrated edge and some measuring marks for transplanting. We've got a real bargain. You can put right still on that. Pair of pruners, which will be useful for pruning, but also you can use those for some harvesting as well. And then your trusty 5-gallon bucket that you can use for harvesting, measuring your harvest, and whatever else may come up in your garden. It's always nice to have a 5-gallon bucket around. So send me an email. We're available during the week to pick those up. And we'd be happy to. In July, we're not going to be having a webinar, but we will be reaching out to schedule some site visits. We would love to see how you guys are doing on your gardens. Also, Grow Appalachia central office will be visiting us during July. So really, if you're really proud of your garden, or you're just having a lot of trouble with your garden and you want to use it as an example, send us a note. We would, they want to visit a couple of your gardens too. Maybe.
I'm not particularly proud this year.
All right, so that'll be happening in July, and then our next meeting will be in August, where we will talk about the preservation and canning. And I'll send some more details about the location on that. That'll also be a hybrid class, so in-person opportunity available. And then the other thing, I'm going to send you some links to webinars about disease and pest control, because that will likely become an issue before. So keep an eye out for several emails from me, is one thing, and then contact me to schedule a date to pick up your item. And I think that's it. If that's it from you guys. Any other questions before we jump off?
How many in the year can you plant new lettuce? Can you actually grow through the summer? Will it, what do they call it, bolt or something?
Carburized, that will make it.
I have a question about how late in the summer can you plant lettuce?
And you can do, I was growing lettuce November.
And it depends on the variety. Some are more heat tolerant, some are more cold tolerant, so you can look it up.
I was harvesting it.
But I'm gonna say bye to everyone on the Zoom. Thank you, Tapa, for being here.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.